Something most men don't realize is this. Respect doesn't disappear in a dramatic explosion. It doesn't vanish the night she packs her bags or the moment she cheats. No, respect dies quietly, slowly, almost invisibly. It's not a bomb, it's a leak, a drip, a silent erosion that eats away at the foundation long before you notice the cracks. And here's the brutal truth. It can happen even if you never did anything wrong. Think about the man who worked hard, paid the bills, came home on time, loved his wife, raised his kids. He wasn't abusive, he wasn't neglectful. He didn't betray her trust. He did everything society told him a good man should do. And yet one day he wakes up and realizes she doesn't look at him the same way. The spark in her eyes is gone. Her tone is colder. Her touch is rarer. And eventually she doesn't admire him anymore. How does that happen? How does a man who checked every box still end up invisible to the woman he gave his life to? You see, respect doesn't collapse because of one catastrophic failure. Respect collapses because of 1,000 tiny cuts that happen over time. She doesn't wake up one morning and decide, I don't respect him anymore. She stops respecting you the same way you stop noticing paint peeling on the walls. First a small corner, then a bigger patch, until one day the whole room looks decayed. The scariest part? She won't tell you when it starts. She might not even realize it herself. It begins with small things. The way she sighs when you give in too easily. The way she rolls her eyes when you apologize for something that didn't need an apology. The way she tests you, not out of cruelty, but instinct, and sees you shrink instead of stand tall. Each moment seems harmless, insignificant, but they add up. And with each small moment, the silent collapse continues. Men often confuse love with respect. She might still love you. She might still care deeply for you, want you safe, want you around. But love without respect is not admiration. It's not attraction. It's not desire. And a woman who doesn't respect you cannot follow you, cannot look up to you, cannot give you the devotion that makes a relationship alive. This is the tragedy many men face. They thought being good enough would protect them. They thought loyalty, provision, kindness were guarantees of respect. But those things are the bare minimum. They're expected. They don't inspire admiration, they maintain stability. And stability alone doesn't keep her respect alive. So here's the question you need to ask yourself. If you never cheated, never abused, never betrayed, why does she look at you differently now? Why does she treat you like a roommate instead of a man? Why is the spark gone when you did everything right? The answer is uncomfortable. It's not about what you did wrong, it's about what you allowed to fade. Every man has been sold the same dream. If you make her feel safe, if you're reliable, if you're always there for her, she'll never leave. It sounds logical, it sounds noble, but here's the paradox no one talks about. The very things that make her feel comfortable can be the same things that make her stop seeing you as a man she admires, because comfort is not attraction. Safety is not respect, and predictability is not desire. Think about it. Comfort is what she wants in a mattress. Predictability is what she wants from her morning alarm. Safety is what she expects from the seatbelt in her car. Do you think she looks at her mattress, her alarm clock, or her seatbelt with passion and admiration? Of course not. They're reliable, dependable, expected, and invisible. And when you start living only as her comfort, you start becoming invisible too. This is where so many good men fall into the trap. They give her everything. They make themselves endlessly available. They drop everything to please her, to reassure her, to remind her that they'll always be there. And what does she feel? Gratitude maybe, but not respect, not excitement, not that deep admiration that makes her look at you like you're irreplaceable. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Attraction thrives on polarity. Masculine and feminine, challenge and chase, tension and release. When you remove all the tension by being endlessly predictable, when you erase all the polarity by being endlessly available, you kill the very spark that once pulled her to you. She doesn't consciously think, he's too safe, so I don't respect him. It doesn't work that way. It happens at the subconscious level. Her biology is wired to admire the man who stands firm in himself, who doesn't bend into comfort just to keep the peace. Why do you think women test men? It's not just games, it's her instinct checking. Is this man solid or is he moldable? Does he lead himself or does he fold for me? When you always fold, when you always agree, when you're always soft to keep things comfortable, her respect begins to erode. That's why so many men hear the dreaded words, "You're a great guy, but something's missing." What's missing isn't love or loyalty, it's polarity. She can love you deeply, but stop feeling attracted to you because you turned yourself into comfort instead of challenge, predictability instead of mystery. And here's the cruel twist. She'll never tell you this directly because she doesn't even fully know why. She'll just feel the shift. She'll pull back. She'll get colder. She'll start noticing other men, not because they're better than you, but because they spark polarity where you've smothered it with comfort. So ask yourself, have you become her comfort, or are you still the man she admires? Are you her safe routine, or are you still the spark that ignites her desire? Because when you confuse comfort with attraction, you don't lose her love right away. You lose something far more important, her respect. Respect isn't destroyed in one argument. It doesn't vanish the day you forgot an anniversary or the moment you snapped during an argument. Respect fades in smaller, quieter ways. It slips away every time you surrender your boundaries in exchange for peace. It starts innocent. She wants to go somewhere, you don't. You don't feel like it, but you tell yourself, it's easier if I just say yes. She makes a cutting remark. Instead of pushing back, you laugh it off. She changes the plan last minute, and you go along because you don't want to cause tension. None of these moments seem like a big deal on their own, but over months, over years, they stack like bricks in a wall. And that wall becomes the barrier between her admiration and your reality. Men are trained to believe that saying yes is proof of love. That compromise is what keeps relationships alive. And compromise is important, but there's a difference between compromise and surrender. When compromise becomes your default response, when every decision bends to her comfort at the cost of your integrity, that's not partnership, that's submission. And submission kills respect. Here's the paradox. You think you're keeping her happy, but every time you fold too easily, every time you let her set the tone unchecked, she doesn't feel gratitude. She feels less safe. She feels less admiration. Because deep down, a woman does not want a man she can control. She wants a man she can trust to stand firm, even if she resists him in the moment. Think about it like this. Boundaries are like guardrails on a bridge. Without them, the road looks wide and open, but it's dangerous. You could fall off at any time. Guardrails make the path secure. They give structure. They provide direction. In relationships, your boundaries are those guardrails. When you enforce them calmly but firmly, she may push against them, but she feels secure knowing you won't collapse at the first sign of resistance. But when you remove those guardrails, when you allow her moods, her demands, her impulses to dictate your actions, she feels like she's driving on a cliff with no protection. And her subconscious says, this man cannot lead. This man cannot hold the line. This man is not strong enough. She might not say it out loud, but she will feel it. And once she feels it, respect begins to die. Here's the truth most men don't want to face. Respect is maintained through boundaries, not through endless giving. She won't respect you because you always agree. She won't admire you because you never say no. She won't desire you because you've made yourself perfectly moldable to her will. Respect grows when she knows you stand for something beyond her approval. Every yes you give when your soul screams no chips away at her respect. Every conflict you avoid in the name of peace only creates war inside her mind. And every time you surrender your boundaries, you surrender a piece of her admiration. So ask yourself, are you loved because you lead with strength, or tolerated because you surrendered for comfort? Because in the end, she cannot admire the man who cannot enforce his own lines. A woman can still live with you, sleep beside you, and even say she loves you. But if admiration is gone, the relationship is already dying. Because here's the truth. Women don't fall in love with men they pity. And they don't fall in love with men they control. They fall in love with men they admire. Admiration is the secret fuel of attraction. It's why she looked at you like you were the only man in the room when you first met. It's why she bragged about you to her friends, why she trusted you, why she followed your lead. Without admiration, love becomes obligation, intimacy becomes routine, and desire turns into indifference. But admiration doesn't disappear overnight. It dies slowly through subtle shifts that feel invisible in the moment, but catastrophic over time. It starts with approval seeking. The man who once lived on his mission, who chased his own vision, begins living for her validation. Instead of asking himself, "What do I want? Where am I going?" he looks to her for clues. Is she happy? Does she approve? Am I good enough? Every decision becomes about keeping her satisfied, and in the process, he stops being the man she admired. Then comes the constant apologizing. Not for real mistakes, but for existing. Sorry I'm late. Sorry I said that. Sorry I upset you. The man who once stood firm is now shrinking himself, begging for forgiveness for simply being human. And here's the brutal irony. The more you apologize for who you are, the more she starts to believe you have something to apologize for. Each apology digs the grave of her admiration deeper. And finally, the most deadly shift of all, losing your independent goals. In the beginning, you had fire. You had dreams, ambitions, a life outside of her. That independence made you magnetic. But somewhere along the way, you traded your mission for her comfort. You stopped growing. You stopped leading yourself. Your life became orbiting hers. And the moment you made her the center of your existence, you stopped being the man she could admire. Because here's the paradox. She doesn't want to be your world. She wants to join you in your world. She doesn't want to guide you. She wants to follow a man who guides himself. When you abandon that role, you don't just lose her respect, you lose her attraction. And that's when admiration dies. Not in a big explosion, but in small suffocations. A man who lives for her approval instead of his mission. A man who apologizes for existing instead of standing tall. A man who abandons his goals to orbit hers. She may still love him. She may even stay with him. But she will never admire him again. And once admiration dies, love without respect is just tolerance. Desire without admiration is just duty. And a relationship without admiration is already over, even if you're both still under the same roof. If you really want to understand why she loses respect for you, even when she still says she loves you, you have to go deeper than emotions. You have to look at biology and psychology. Because beneath her words, beneath her feelings, there's programming running her behavior. And that programming is older than civilization itself. Women are wired to test men, not because they're cruel, not because they're manipulative, but because survival depended on it. For thousands of years, a woman's safety and the safety of her children depended on choosing a man who was strong enough, confident enough, and self-respecting enough to protect and provide. If he folded under pressure, if he let others control him, if he lacked backbone, her future and her children's future was at risk. That wiring never went away. It's still there underneath the surface. Every sigh, every eye roll, every challenge she throws your way is her biology asking, is this man strong enough to lead? Can I trust him when life gets hard? Can I still look up to him? And here's where so many men fail. Instead of standing firm, instead of meeting her tests with calm strength, they collapse, they argue, they beg, they over-explain, they apologize for things they didn't even do wrong. They think they're keeping the peace, but what they're really doing is sending one message loud and clear. You can bend me. I'll fold for you. My self-respect is negotiable. That's when her subconscious kicks in. She might still love you. She might still care deeply. She might even tell herself she's happy. But deep down, something shifts. She doesn't admire you anymore. And once admiration fades, attraction goes with it. Think about it like this. Attraction isn't logical. It's biological. A woman doesn't wake up and decide, I want to respect my man today. Her nervous system makes that decision for her. When she feels your strength, your leadership, your boundaries, her biology rewards her with attraction. When she feels your weakness, your constant approval seeking, your lack of mission, her biology punishes her with indifference. And this is the cruel paradox. You can be faithful, loyal, loving, and generous, and still lose her respect if you fail these subconscious tests. She doesn't want to lose attraction for you. She doesn't plan for it. But biology doesn't care about her intentions. Biology cares about signals, strength, leadership, self-respect. Lose those signals and you lose her admiration, even if she still says she loves you. That's why men so often feel blindsided. But she said she loved me. She said she was happy. And then one day she was gone. What she meant was, I still loved you in my heart, but my biology stopped admiring you. And once her biology stops admiring you, love alone isn't enough to hold her. So remember this, love keeps her connected. Respect keeps her attracted. Without both, you don't have a partner. You have a roommate. The scariest part about losing a woman's respect is that it doesn't happen with a big announcement. She doesn't sit you down and say, hey, just so you know, I don't admire you anymore. No, it shows up in subtle shifts, changes in her tone, her energy, her body language. And if you're not paying attention, you'll miss the warning signs until it's too late. The first sign? Her tone changes. In the beginning, her words carried warmth, softness, maybe even admiration. But now her tone drips with sarcasm, with little stabs of contempt. She starts making jokes at your expense, not playful ones, but sharp ones, the kind that sting. She corrects you in public, cuts you off mid-sentence, dismisses your ideas before you finish explaining. You might laugh it off, tell yourself she's just stressed, but deep down you know, this is not how a woman speaks to a man she admires. The second sign, she tests you more aggressively. Women always test. It's biological, it's instinctual. But when respect is fading, the tests stop being subtle. They become sharp, almost cruel. She'll push your buttons harder, escalate arguments faster, provoke reactions just to see if you'll break. And here's the twist. She doesn't even want you to fail. A part of her is hoping you'll stand tall, that you'll show her you're still the man she can look up to. But every time you fold, every time you back down just to keep the peace, another piece of her admiration dies. The third sign, intimacy becomes mechanical or disappears entirely. In the beginning, she reached for you, she wanted you, she lit up in your presence. But now, if intimacy happens at all, it feels like an obligation, a box to check. The passion is gone, replaced by duty. And sometimes she withdraws completely. Nights get colder, touch becomes rare, and if you're not careful, she'll start telling herself that her lack of desire is just normal, when in reality it's a symptom of a deeper truth. She doesn't admire you anymore. And finally, the most dangerous sign, she looks at other men differently than she looks at you. You'll notice her eyes light up at a compliment from a stranger, while your praise barely moves the needle. You'll catch her listening more intently when another man speaks, laughing more easily at his jokes, respecting his opinion more than yours. And when you confront her, she'll dismiss it. You're being paranoid. It's nothing, but you feel it. You feel the shift because admiration is visible, desire is visible. And if she saves that spark for someone else while looking at you with dull eyes, you already know what's happening. These signs are not random. They are signals. Signals that the foundation of respect is crumbling beneath your feet. Ignore them and you'll wake up one day wondering how you suddenly lost her. But the truth is, you didn't lose her suddenly. You just ignored the whispers until they became screams. So pay attention, listen, watch. Because when a woman stops admiring you, she doesn't just change how she acts. She changes who she is with you. When a woman's respect for you begins to fade, most men panic. They try to fix it the only way they know how. Begging, pleading, buying gifts, working harder to prove their love. But here's the truth, you can't negotiate respect. You can't buy it back with flowers, vacations, or desperate promises. Because respect doesn't follow compliance. It follows strength. So how do you rebuild what's been lost? It starts with reestablishing boundaries. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in quiet, unshakable firmness. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you weaken her trust in you. Every time you avoid conflict to keep the peace, you tell her you value her mood more than your own integrity. That has to stop. The rebuild begins when you decide, this is who I am. This is what I stand for. And I will not compromise my core for approval. A man with boundaries commands respect because he respects himself first. The second step is reclaiming your mission. When you met her, you had goals, you had ambition, you were chasing something bigger than her. That energy made you magnetic, but somewhere along the way, many men trade their mission for her comfort. They orbit her life instead of building their own. And nothing kills admiration faster than a man who abandons his purpose. To rebuild respect, you must reconnect with your mission, your career, your growth, your vision for the future. Because when you live for something beyond her, she remembers why she admired you in the first place. The third step is rediscovering your independence. Too many men fall into the trap of dependence, emotional, social, even financial. They rely on her validation, her approval, her attention to feel whole. That's a losing game. A woman cannot admire a man who needs her more than she needs him. Independence doesn't mean ignoring her or withdrawing affection. It means being whole without her. It means you have your own friends, your own hobbies, your own life that doesn't collapse if she pulls away. Independence creates polarity. Dependence kills it. And finally, the cornerstone of everything, self-respect. A man without self-respect will never hold a woman's respect. You can't demand from her what you refuse to give yourself. Self-respect means setting standards for your health, your finances, your time, your behavior. It means refusing to tolerate disrespect, not with anger, but with quiet certainty. When you carry yourself as a man who values himself, the world responds in kind, and she will too. Here's the brutal truth. You don't rebuild respect by working harder for her. You rebuild it by working harder on yourself, by becoming a man who doesn't need validation because he already carries strength, by becoming a man who leads, not pleads, by becoming the man she can look up to again. Because in the end, respect isn't about what you give her. Respect is about who you are when no one is watching. And when you stand tall in that truth, admiration follows. Here's the brutal truth most men don't want to hear. Respect is not about being nice. It's not about never making mistakes. It's not about keeping her comfortable at all costs. Respect is about never letting go of the man she could admire. Think back to the man she first fell for. He wasn't perfect, he wasn't flawless, but he had something she couldn't ignore. A backbone, a mission, a presence that said, this is who I am and this is where I'm going. That energy is what drew her in. Not perfection, not compliance, admiration. Over time, too many men let that version of themselves fade. They trade strength for safety, conviction for comfort, leadership for approval. And then they wonder why she looks at them with indifference. They wonder why the fire in her eyes has gone cold. But the answer is simple. She cannot admire the man who surrendered himself for her approval. Respect doesn't come from trying to be flawless. It comes from being unshakable. A man who knows his values and won't compromise them for validation. A man who still leads himself when life gets hard. Who still pursues his mission when distractions pile up. Who still stands tall when tested. That is the man she admires. That is the man she follows. And here's the paradox. She doesn't want you to be perfect. She doesn't want you to agree with everything she says. She doesn't even want you to always put her first. What she wants, what she needs, is to feel that she is with a man who cannot be bent, who cannot be broken, who refuses to shrink himself to keep her happy. Because love without respect is just affection. Sex without admiration is just routine. And a relationship without respect is nothing more than a partnership of convenience. So don't fool yourself into thinking you can win her back with flowers, dinners, or desperate apologies. Those things might buy temporary peace, but they cannot buy back her admiration. Respect doesn't live in what you give her. Respect lives in who you are. The man she can admire isn't the man who never makes mistakes. It's the man who refuses to abandon himself. The man who keeps building, keeps leading, keeps moving forward. The man who lives by his mission and invites her to follow, not the man who waits for permission and hopes she approves. And that's the brutal truth. If you stop leading yourself, don't be surprised when she stops following you. So the question is simple. Are you still the man she can admire? Or have you slowly traded your strength for safety, your mission for comfort, your self-respect for her approval? Because if you've lost those, you haven't just lost her respect. You've lost yourself. And the only way forward is not to beg for her admiration, but to reclaim it by becoming the man you were always meant to be.